hop into the next part of service.
How are you guys doing today? It is great to see you today. Today we are wrapping up kind of a different series that we've been doing the entire month. We've been in a series this month called True Life, and we've been looking at people's stories, and it's just amazed me how people have the courage to share their stories, sharing their struggles, their mess-ups, their hang-ups, and just being honest with, a big group of people 2 times on Sunday. It's just been incredible. I hope you've enjoyed these stories, and I hope they've been a blessing to you. It's a little different format, but what's amazing is the Bible is full of your stories. We see this throughout the scriptures of stories of the good, the bad, and the ugly, of incredible, Bible characters and incredible stories of what people go through, and it really can be helpful to us. It can be helpful to other people. Now, our main verse of this entire series we've been reciting every week, and it's going to be up on the screens. It's 2 Corinthians 5:17, so read it with me. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, this person is a new creation. The old things have passed away, and behold, new things have come. They say a lot of times, and I hear this so many times, where, people don't change. People don't change. Well, maybe people don't change, but God changes people. Amen. I'm a big believer in that. We see that throughout the scripture, and many of you are here because God has changed you. And even though maybe we say people don't change, they are who they are, well, God changes people. And this month has just been an incredible month, people being open and honest, and we've been telling you every single week how important it is to share your story. Your story can be helpful not only to you, but your story can be helpful to other people. And if you're struggling, if you're going through difficulties, like some of the stories that we've heard this month, one of the greatest things that you could ever do is find somebody safe to talk to. Find somebody safe to open up to. Because we've been saying this the entire month as well, that I cannot heal what I will not reveal. Say it with me. I cannot heal what I will not reveal. Our spiritual enemy, Satan, wants to keep you quiet, wants to keep you isolated, wants to keep you feeling shame, and you're the only one struggling, or you're the only one going through difficulties, and Satan wants you to struggle alone. But when I share my story, when I find somebody safe that I can talk to, I begin to heal. The Bible tells us, whether it's a sin or whether it's something else, that when we share our stories, that it brings healing to us. Not only when we share it with other people, but the Bible also tells us that before the Lord we're to confess before the Lord, and that the Lord will bring forgiveness in our lives. And so confession is very, very powerful. Well, we have themed every Sunday, and we're on our last Sunday. And then next week we're going to begin a brand new series. It's going to be an incredible series. You don't want to miss it. Today's theme is addiction, abuse, and redemption. Redemption. Would you welcome to the stage Matt, Sandra, and Craig? Hello. How are you guys doing today?
Fantastic.
You did wonderful first service, so I know this service is going to be amazing as well. These stories have been really incredible. Matt, thank you guys. Again, I've told everybody each Sunday, because people don't realize until they're up here how difficult it is to not just talk in front of people, but it just has amazed me the entire month of the courage that the people on stage have had in order to share their stories. It's been amazing sharing stories of doubting God and going through struggles, and it just is incredible to me, just the courage that it takes for people to share their stories. So thank you guys for being willing to do that today.
Thanks
I appreciate it.
us.
Matt, will you introduce yourself, and then we're going to talk a little bit about your story.
Okay, my name's Matt Murdoch, not Daredevil, but Matt Murdoch.
Okay, all right. So Matt, your story begins several years ago. You had a life-changing moment in your life. Things were kind of moving along for you. You got in an accident, you were impaired, and you got in an accident, and even though they ended up being a horrible event that you paid for in more ways than one, that ended up really being a catalyst for change for you. Take us back to that accident and what God began to do through that, of going to rehab and on all of that.
So for some context, for 30 years, I've had an addiction to alcohol, and I was a blackout drinker. And that culminated when the following incident happened. Once again, I was in a blackout, and I was attempting to drive home, but I didn't make it there right away. I drove my vehicle into oncoming traffic, and instead of hitting a car, I hit the outside stainless steel stanchion of a bus stop going 45 miles an hour head on. And if there was a 19-year-old gentleman simply sitting on the bench waiting for that bus to come so he could go do whatever it is that he needed to do, and the force of my vehicle hitting the outside of where he was sitting, it propelled him out into the road, and I broke bones in his back and in his pelvis as well. And I did not grow up in a family that went to church. I did not grow up in a family that opened up the Bible. But God was working in my life long before I ever realized it. And I did get arrested that night, but God intervened, and the police called my then wife to come pick me up, and she took me home. And following morning when I was coming to, we had a short conversation. Did not go that well. And she walked out of the room, and her last words to me, "What are you going to do now?" And I made a couple phone calls later on that day, and I would say in 2 or 3 days after that, I found myself in an inpatient rehab facility. And I went in there, I could say, with a little bit of willingness, because I was tired of being sick and tired. I had a lot of fears. There was sexual abuse in my past. I had abandonment issues with my birth father. I never properly got closure when my grandfather died. I never got to say goodbye to him. And there was a litany of other things, but all those things and more were underlying issues as to why I drank the way I drank and behaved the way I behaved. When I was in this rehab facility, I started to heal from those things that beforehand I would not reveal. And with that came forgiveness, and with that came a feeling of freedom and peace of mind and serenity, which I had never felt before. And about 2 weeks of me being in the rehab, I was called to the business manager's office, and I sat down, and he informed me that my health insurance company would no longer pay for me to stay there, that they wanted to kick me out. And I said, what am I gonna do? Because what I feel like I need, I'm receiving from here. And he told me what my option was, and I did not like that option at all. So I would say maybe God gave me the courage to say the following. I said, if I leave here, I'm gonna kill somebody or kill myself. And he said, what did you say? So I said it again a little bit louder, and he asked me to repeat myself again, so I said it a little bit louder. And he then said, well, you know, there is an appeals process that we can go through to see if we can get you to stay here. And we both agreed that that was something that we should start on. And my first 2 appeals were denied. And before finding out my third appeals process, whether it was going to be approved or denied, there was a chapel on site of the property that I was on. And at one point, myself and some of the other patients, residents, went in there, and a chaplain who had some free time, she asked us if we would be okay with her giving us a little tutorial on how to pray and meditate. And I know for me, I was like, well, I got nothing else to do, so go right ahead. And I remembered what she showed us, and I figured, this is going to be life or death for me if I get to stay here or I get denied and have to leave. So let me go attempt what the chaplain showed me to do. And I did that. And I don't know how long I was sitting on a chair in the chapel, but at some point an extremely bright light came into my mind, and I could not look at the light or into the light, but right next to that was my birth father and my grandfather, both who had since passed, and they were both standing there going, everything's gonna be okay. Everything's gonna be all right. And I walked out of that chapel thinking to myself, if that's prayer, that's really weird. The following day, all of the residents meet in this one room in the morning, and there's a giant dry erase board with everything that's going on for the day, what counselors have, what appointments, what meetings are going on. And in the bottom right-hand corner of that dry erase board would be a list of names for people who had graduated the program. On that day, my name was on that list, and I hadn't been there long enough to graduate from the program. So to me, that prayer didn't work, and I was really bummed out, and went back to my room to pack up my stuff, and my name got called over the loudspeaker to go to this certain person's office. Once I found out where that office was, I walked in, started to make my way towards the back of the office. There was a woman named Karen there, and she didn't even turn around from her desk. Her back was to me, and she said, "Is your name Matt, honey?" And I say, "Yep, it is." And she goes, "It's okay, you can stay here." And I said, "Who are you and what are you talking about?" And she said to me that she's the liaison for the rehab facility and my insurance company. And the reason why I was going to be able to stay was because of logistics. And I said, "Huh?" And she explained to me, or said to me, she goes, "Well, when you got into that accident, they took your license, correct?" I said, "Yep." And she goes, "Well, where you live, they don't have public transportation, do they?" And I said, "No, they don't." She goes, "Well, that option that they gave you, how are you planning on getting there?" I said, "To be honest with you, I hadn't really thought about it." And she then said, "Well, I did for you, and that's what we spoke about to your insurance company, so we both agreed that you can stay here." And I said, "Am I allowed to give you a hug?" And she said yes, and I gave her a big hug, and I walked out of her office, out into the sun, and I looked up and I said, "You got me."
Yeah, it's amazing how even when times we don't want to help ourselves, sometimes God will intervene and force us into a situation. But even after rehab, you still had to pay the price. You ended up having to go to jail, to Tent City for a while. You began attending church. You began attending AA. And talk to us about how your relationship with God grew through that, where God became real to you. You had a relationship with the Lord. And then AA has really been a big benefit to you and has really helped you in so many ways.
Yeah, so with both attending church, actually being a part of church and being a part of AA,
Yes.
The fellowship.
Because there's a difference between attending and being a part of.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
We're all tractors up here, by the way.
Yes.
If you don't know what that means, talk to me afterwards. But to be a part of, in terms of church, I quickly got involved in service there, but then also the importance of small group or a life group. And the first life group I ever went to, one of the pastors was a part of that one, and he and I connected right away. And if you looked at the two of us, you're like, there's no way these two people are going to associate with one another, but we did. And he helped me get into the Word so I can understand it. And that just translated into service no matter where I go, whether it be sharing in a meeting, being up here. My wife and I love to do this thing where if we have a cart full of stuff, because we have 9 kids, if we have a cart full of stuff and there's a mom with a baby behind us who's got a box of diapers, we'll say, "Hey, why don't you jump in front of us?" And we're always looked at as if we have more than one head, because kindness is kind of hard to find in this world sometimes, but we like to push that through. And there has been multiple things, and I don't want to take up their time, but things that have happened in my sober life where I've leaned into God and I've leaned into the fellowship and the relationships I have had, and I've always come out stronger as a result.
You know, it's amazing, Matt, just getting to know you over the last few years. You know, just you have such an empathetic heart and such a loving heart where you truly want to help people. You know, you've committed your life to helping people. You've been sober for 17 years. That is incredible. In a row. 17 years in a row. That is incredible. And you came to me a few years ago. It was not long after I started here at New Hope. And you came to me, Sandra, and they're married, by the way. I don't think I mentioned that at the beginning. And the reason we have all three is because their stories are all linked together. You'll find out here in just a minute. But you came to me and you're like, hey, we feel like the Lord wants us to start like a recovery group here at New Hope. And so we have a recovery group that meets on Friday nights at 7 o'clock. There's like 40 to 50 sometimes people that show up. I've been a couple times to meet people, and it's just been incredible. Hope stands for hearing other people's experiences. It's not just alcohol. It can be addiction of different things and struggles. And it's really been incredible for our church and for you guys. Talk to us a little bit about the beginning of Hope Recovery and how things are going now.
So I'll be completely honest with you. The idea was put on my wife's heart by God. And we probably talked about it for maybe 2.5 minutes at some point. And then some time went by, and we were at a church service here. And when we left the service, we were standing next to Pastor Russ outside, and Sandra said, I have something to share with you. And she just unloaded on him about our idea, or God's idea. And Pastor Russ was very receptive, but he said, you need to go talk to Pastor Rick. So we went in and told him what our idea was, and I appreciate you were right on board from the very beginning. You were so excited. I think you actually asked us, do you guys want to start tomorrow? And we said no, because we had some things to work out.
Just so you know, if you come up with an idea, you're going to do it, right? Oh, New Hope should do this. New Hope should do it. Go for it, right?
So in this upcoming January will be our 3rd year that we've had it now. And we've now moved. Thank you. And that's not really for anything that Sandra and I did. It's because people have come, and we've done this together, and you don't have to be alone. And there's been some absolutely miracle-like things that have happened in that room. I can't go into too much detail, but if you see me afterwards, I'll tell you all about it. And our whole premise of doing what we do over there, yes, it's for if you have an addiction to alcohol or drugs, but we also added another component. If you're a family member or a friend and you have someone in your life who either struggles with the addiction or is in recovery themselves, we welcome you as well, because we need to hear those different perspectives on how this affects people besides the person that's the one that's sick, right? Yes. And there has been so many things that have happened there. I do want to go into more detail, but they'll knock me off my chair. Yeah,
it's been an incredible group. You guys have done an incredible job, and I just really appreciate, that it's a safe space where people are not going to be judged. And you wanted to mention a little more, because we didn't mention it a lot in first service, just that people are not alone. If they're struggling, you're not alone. You don't have to suffer alone. There are other people that have been through what you're going through and can really be a blessing.
Sure. So it's my belief that addiction wants for you to suffer in silence.
Yes.
It wants to keep the heel of the devil on your neck. Yes. And it tends to make people isolate. It tends to make people feel like, well, no one's going to understand. You come to room number 9 on a Friday night at 7 o'clock, I assure you that we understand, and you will not be alone. You no longer have to suffer and go through any more pain by yourself. We get through things together.
That's incredible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sandra, you, Matt, are married. Growing up, You know, you guys, yeah, I'm just informing you, you guys are married, by the way. You know, growing up, you grew up Catholic, your family went to church, rosary, all of that. But even though your family went to church, you had a lot of struggles growing up, and your home was not healthy, and you suffered physical abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, and not from a stranger, not from, you know, a person from the outside, but from the person that's supposed to love and protect you the most, and that's your father. Talk to us a little bit about your childhood and into your teen years and the abuse that you suffered growing up.
My name is Sandra. I am the oldest of 5 children. I have 3 brothers and a sister. And we came here in 1977 from Portugal, so fishing industry was huge here. My dad was a raging alcoholic. He, like Pastor said, he was abusive in every area. I grew up in a house where there was really no sleep, going to school with bags under my eyes, my mom worked the cannery. My dad couldn't keep a job because he would lose it because he was always drunk. So my mom worked the cannery till 3 o'clock in the morning. And at the young age of 12, I would take care of my siblings. I'd make sure they ate. My dad, I would always know when the abuse, I started to recognize the change in his eyes. His eyes would be black, and I knew that the abuse was going to start. It was going to be active. And so I would grab my siblings, and I would take them into the bedroom, because he would take the doorknobs off so we couldn't lock ourselves, and we would put dressers behind the doors, and he'd put knives under the doors, threaten to kill us. We'd jump out the windows, sleep in my mom's car. It was like that nightly. Beating, he beat me so bad one night with the belt buckle that I couldn't move for days. And I love what you say, what we keep in the darkness stays there, because I never spoke to anyone about my upbringing. Not very many people knew the abuse that my dad instilled in me. He didn't really do that to my younger siblings because myself and my brother would protect them. But he was abusive to my mom as well. The first time that I remember the sexual abuse, I was 13. I remember telling my mom, and it was never spoken of. So to me, I didn't feel like it mattered. It was something that was kept under the rug. But I was a young child, so I didn't understand that my mom was a victim as well. But I held on to that resentment for many years. My dad, at the age of 15, I got pregnant, and I had an abortion that I didn't want to have. I wasn't going to share this, and I shared with Pastor Rick that this morning God revealed to me that I need to share it because I need to bring it to light. It was something I didn't want to do. I wanted to have my baby, but I knew that my dad would kill me, and my mom was full. I was brought up in a Catholic home. We'd pray the rosary every night. We go to church every Sunday, and all these things were happening in my house. So I had this love and hate relationship with God. I didn't understand. I believed in him. I always felt his presence, but I didn't feel like I was seen. I was dirty. I was a sinner, just like my dad. All the names that my dad called me, I believed them. And so when I had that abortion, it was like I was emptier than ever. I was very empty, and I carry that emptiness for many years.
And as horrible as that is, even as you got older, the abuse didn't stop. Even up to 15, 16, 17 years old. And you finally came to a point where you literally wanted to kill your dad, and you needed to leave. And so you made that decision to just get out of there. Talk to us about how that shaped you, because what happened next was you turned to all kinds of different things to try to fill that emptiness, that hurt, that pain that you were experiencing. And of course, that led you down a pathway of addiction. Talk to us about that next step of leaving the house and
Yes. I started to sleep with a knife under my pillow. Because, my dad, even at a older age, still tried to sneak into my room, and I would tuck the sheets under the bed so I could feel it when he would pull them off, and it would wake me up. And, in high school, I remember having my first drink. I was afraid of alcohol. That's my honest truth. I didn't want to be anything like my father. I hated him. To me, he was the devil. I saw the devil in him. I saw darkness in him. But I liked the effect of alcohol right away. I liked the way it made me feel numb. I didn't have to feel the pain. It was my solution. Alcohol in high school and drugs are part of my story, was my solution for a long time, and I've shared this before, and I know it's horrible for me to say, but if I didn't have drugs and alcohol, I probably wouldn't be here, because I didn't know how to deal with the emotional pain. I could take the beatings. It was the emotional abuse and the sexual abuse, the things that, a father shouldn't do to his daughter. And so I turned to alcohol and drugs for a very long time. And when I had my first child in 1991, Thomas, I have 6 beautiful children. I promised him that I would be nothing like my dad. My biggest dream was to be a mom. That was my desire, is I wanted to be a mom and give the love that I never had. I don't know where that came from, but that's all I wanted. And, I did well for a long time, and I still drank, but I was really careful. But then I had my daughter, Cassandra. She was my last. I had 5 boys, and then I had my daughter. My marriage was falling apart. I felt lonely. My husband was never home. There was other ladies. I felt ugly. I felt unworthy. I felt dirty. All those feelings, all those things that my dad called me, I started to feel those again. That emptiness, because my kids for a long time filled that emptiness in me. But then that just dissipated, and that emptiness started to come back, and alcohol took place of that. More and more and more, to a point where I just couldn't stop. Alcohol, I didn't just use it to numb anymore. I used it because my body craved it. I needed to function.
And that drinking, that abuse, landed you in the hospital and got you to a point where you didn't know if you were going to make it, and your kids were literally called in to say goodbye to you. And that ended up being a real pivotal, life-changing moment for you. Walk us through that season and how coming out of that really changed you.
So my last drink, I was in and out of hospitals. I was in a hospital in 2007 for a pancreatitis attack. I was in there for 45 days. I had no idea about addiction. I just thought I was a drunk like my dad. I didn't do the things my dad did, but I drank like he did. And they thought I was going to die with my pancreatitis, but I recovered. And then my last drink, I saw something that my ex wrote about me that really hurt me. And I saw a bottle of vodka. It was in the backyard. It was beautiful. It was glistening in the sun, and it was a Costco bottle of vodka, and I drank that. All I remember is the first drink. I don't remember anything after, but I was told I drank that in a couple hours. I ended up in the hospital, and when I ended up in the hospital, and they didn't think I was going to make it. My blood alcohol level was very, very high. They either thought I was going to die or I was going to have a wet brain. I learned recently the miracles that happen in room 9 at 7 o'clock every Friday. My son Titus gave me a token for my 10-year sobriety. And
yeah, that's incredible. And that was, how recent was that? That was not too long ago.
That was August 18th of this year was my 10th year
Your 10 year
of sobriety.
Yes. And your son presented your token and wrote you a letter?
Yes, he wrote me a letter, and I just want to share the miracles of, no, I give all my glory to God. Because when I was in that hospital, I remember just crying, like, why can't I stop, Lord? Why can't I stop? I would give my life for my kids, but I could not give up that bottle. I just couldn't give it up. It was the only thing. That I could do is to cry out to God. And I said, I know I can't do it, Lord, but I know you can. I knew that he could. And it was hard to stay sober. It was really hard. But my son gave me a token, and he wrote this beautiful letter, because I don't remember my last drink. All I remember is the first one. I don't remember what happened. I just remember waking up in the hospital. And my son Titus wrote a letter to remind me of what alcohol does to me. He said he came into the room. My ex asked my kids to come in, and 3 of them did, Timmy, Cassandra, and Titus. And he said that he didn't recognize me. I was very swollen. I had tubes down my throat and in my nose. And he was in the room with me for a little while, and all he could do was lay his body on me and tell me he loved me, because he didn't know if he would have another chance to do that. And that he saw a tear come down my cheek, and that he squeezed my hand and I squeezed it back. And he said in that moment, that was the promise that he always wanted. He knew that me squeezing his hand back was that promise. See, that was God. That's God working, not just in my life, but my son's life. And, I love that song that they sang up here about how God is the protector, because when I look back at my life, especially when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, and I learned how to tell my truth, speak my pain, take off those Band-Aids, because I covered all my pain for years, and I drank over all of it. I drank over it. I lost my track of thought. But anyways,
No, it's okay. It's okay.
I realized that God was always there. Every moment of my life, he was always there. He always revealed to me. It was in those silent moments when I would cry and I felt like I didn't hear him, that he was speaking to me. Because if God wasn't in my life, and I'm grateful that my mom, especially my mom, my beautiful, strong mom, who also suffered, she taught me the love of God. And I'm grateful for that, because no matter what, I know God can do all things. If he can save a wretch like me, he can save anyone.
We are all wretched, believe me. So Sandra, last question here, and it's really, to me, this is one of the most remarkable parts of your story. It just blows me away, just the grace of God and God's power in your life. Your dad started to get older and started to get sick, and you made the decision to help your dad, the same dad that abused you for years. You decided to help your dad as he got older. How are you able to do that?
With God. I didn't want to. My dad had isolated everybody in his life. He didn't speak any English. He didn't drive. So he needed rides to the doctors and grocery shopping. And I didn't want to. I was newly sober. And everyone in my sobriety group told me it was a bad idea, because it was a trigger. I might go back to drinking. But there was something inside of me that kept nudging me to help him. And I did, and I got to, God softened my heart. I got to see truly how sick of a person he was. He was schizophrenic. He thought he was being chased by the government. He thought people were spying on him. He would hide his money under rugs. He was just really, he was spiritually dead. He didn't have God. And, my dad ended up committing suicide. I helped him for 6 months. And through all of that, the wonderful thing is God is the one that was nudging me to do that, because it taught me to forgive my father. And by forgiving him, I don't have to live in that bondage. I can be victorious and not be a victim, because forgiveness is not really for him. It's for me. It's to set me free.
Yes.
Because if I don't forgive, I'm a sinner. If I want you to forgive me, I have to be willing to forgive. And, I prayed for my dad after he passed. I gave him a beautiful service, and I wrote him a letter, and I left it at his grave, and I left on Father's Day, and letting him know that I forgive him.
Wow, that's incredible. That is amazing. Craig, my man, Craig. I have to read you the first line of Craig's submission on Share Your Story online. And this is what Craig said, and I quote, 19 years ago, I was a menace to society. Those are the first lines of your story. Craig, tell us a little bit about yourself. You had difficulties growing up as well. Just shows us like how important it is for us parents. We're not going to be perfect, but our kids need to be raised in a loving, safe place. It doesn't guarantee they're going to turn out good, but it definitely helps. Craig, you had struggles growing up. Your parents were addicts. You had a difficult relationship with your dad. Your grandparents ended up raising you. You went through, abuse as well, physical, sexual, all of that. Share a little bit about that season of your life.
Hi, my name is Craig. I almost added I'm an alcoholic.
That's okay.
Yeah, I didn't realize the kind of situation I was growing up in because my parents were alcoholics and addicts. My dad was in the Marine Corps. My mom's the only child of very wealthy parents, so we always lived in a nice place. It was nice. Yeah, mom and dad drank too much. They fought a lot. My dad and I threw hands a lot. But I didn't think it was I didn't know different, so I just thought that's the way it is growing up. And at about 10 years old, my grandparents had enough of us bouncing back between them and my parents, and so they just went to court and took custody of us, and we all moved in with my grandparents. And it wasn't like they had to set up couches and all that stuff. We had our own rooms at my grandparents' house. When we would go to visit and stuff, we had our own rooms. So we just went into our rooms and raised by them. My dad was, the only way he knew how to discipline was whoopings. And at one point I just said, I'm not taking any more whoopings. It's just not going to happen. And it was probably the worst beating I'd ever taken in my life because I was bleeding out of every orifice, I think. And but I tagged him good, so the next morning, he's going to work, and he's, I think he was a top sergeant at the time, but he's going to work in his Marine Corps group, and he's got a big old cherry on his eye, man. It made me feel so good. And that was really the rest of my life. My nickname was Parking Lot Craig. I handled everything in the parking lot. A good buddy of mine's mom, this is the early 70s, and it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And so I was abused by my buddy's mom, but I didn't think it was abuse. I wore it as a badge of courage. I'm like, yeah. And it wasn't until going through the steps years later that I found out that it was abuse. I left home on my own. I didn't feel abandoned. I left. It wasn't until years later, when you leave home at 14, someone's supposed to come looking for you. Maybe put my picture on a milk carton or something, and no one did that. At 10 years old, there was a funeral for my grandfather on my dad's side, and he was also in the Marine Corps, as his father was, and his father was, and his father was. Marine Corps goes back in my family to the Spanish-American War. So we did a soldier salute, and I was 10 at the time, so I got one too, and it was a shot of Jameson's, because I'm Irish Catholic, and that's the only liquor we drank. A little bit for Gramps and love for me, and I was 10 years old, and that taste of liquor rekindled. My mom couldn't stop drinking and shooting dope when she was pregnant with me, so for me, I think it just rekindled. It's like I relapsed, and then I got that drink, and from then on, by the time I was 13, I had I was a heroin addict. I stole, like I say, I was a menace to society. I was not a nice person. And from like 13 until March 25th, 2007, when I walked in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I was somewhat intoxicated every single moment.
You know, you told me that when you grew up, you believed that there was a God, because you too had Catholic background as well. So you knew that there was a God, but God was never real to you in your life. You were in and out of prison. You overdosed 6 times, shot, stabbed. You probably shouldn't be alive today, but you're here. And it's amazing what God has brought you through. Talk about just those moments of knowing that God exists, but then going through all that you're going through. How did you end up getting clean?
Well, like I say, I believed in God because I had to sit in church every Sunday next to my old man who was always so hungover. He was red in the face, but we were at church every Sunday. So I believed in God, but I mean, I was not a nice person. I'm going to tell you right now, I didn't actively pick on him, but if a Christian kid came up and said something to me, he would get that look like, you better step away from here, I'm going to knock you out. So I was like that. I just, I died 6 times, man. I was dead 6 times.
Put the mic up there.
Oh,
You
yeah,
go.
I was dead 6 times, I was not a nice person. And so, like, when I went to prison, I didn't want any kind of rehab or going to church or going to AA meetings. I was a baker. I cooked booze, and I was a hitter for a real small white supremacy group. In prison, you kind of have to hook up with what you are. And so I'm not proud of it today, but it kept me alive in a very violent place. Prison's violent. They call it prison for a reason. If they made it fun, no one would mind going there. I made it out, and I drugged 3 wives and 2 wonderful children through the hurricane that was Craig's life. And on March 22nd of 2007, I got really drunk at my general manager's baby shower, and the wife and I had moved to separate ends of the house. She had a room, I had a room. But for that kind of stuff, she was actually there because she was my wife, and I was the director of catering events, so she had to be there, and she saw what had happened. And that next day, I had to go to work, and I issued banks, and I told my captains, I was the director of catering and events, so I had banquet captains that worked for me. I said, I'm going to go to my office. I got some paperwork to catch on. If you need me, call me. I stopped at the liquor room because, of course, I'm director of catering events and banquets. Of course, I have keys to the liquor room. I grabbed a bottle of Stoli and a couple of cans of V8 juice, and I went to my office. And it was at that moment, first time in my life, I was never one of those, ooh, God, get me out of this and I won't do it again, because I knew I was going to do it again. And it was that moment I beseeched God, I can't do this anymore. I can't go on like this. I had been drinking and shooting dope for 37 years. Staying loaded is a real hard job. It's a real hard job. And I was tired, and
So three years ago is when the big shift came for you. You were, even though you'd been sober for how long at that time?
about 15 years.
About 15 years, which is remarkable. And yes. You were at Matt and Sandra's house. You were at a really dark moment, a dark place in your life, and you're reaching out to Matt, and then Sandra, who wasn't listening, ended up saying something to you that really changed things for you.
Yeah, about a year before that, I'd lost a job at the Navy. It was my dream job. I was going to retire. I could go to work like this in shorts and a button-up shirt. I worked Monday through Friday, and my ex-girlfriend was at first service. She said, you didn't remind them that I lost the job because of her. She had done something against the law, and they said to me, you either resign or we're going to prosecute her. I'm not going to let her get prosecuted. She couldn't do a minute in jail. So I lost that job, and it ate on me, and I started to get angry, and that same ex-girlfriend asked me to move out of my house. It was my house. And it was just dark. It was dark. I wasn't sharing about it. I was angry. It was eating me up. I got attacked at work. I worked, at the time, I had got another job in the field of addiction, and I was working the overnight shift, and a guy got around the desk because the guy that was supposed to be watching was asleep, and I was on the computer, and he hit me with all of a sudden I look up, and he's swinging this fan. He clocks me in this fan, and we go down, and we start going at it, and I relapsed on violence. Because like I say, I was a violent person. And I hadn't been, and that set me off. And so I showed up at the Top of the Hill picnic. Matt and Sandra were there. I was manic. And Matt, like he does with, Matt's my sponsor. And like he does with everyone, he sees. And like Pastor said, he has that empathy. He sees, and he just, I had known them because Matt had been sober almost as long as I did. South Bay Recovery's small. I'd been to their home a couple of times for a football game and a meeting, and so I knew them, but they invited me over to their tent, and Matt said, sit down, and we just started talking. And they're like, Sandra, I don't really remember what we talked about or what. I remember Miss Sandra at about a half hour said, come on and sing some karaoke, Craig. And so I'm singing karaoke with Miss Sandra, and I asked Matt that day, my sponsor, I had a sponsor, but he was dying of cancer, and he was really, really, really sick. And so I asked Matt if I could continue to talk and come over. And so I was over at their house, and I'm telling Matt what's going on in my life. And Miss Sandra came out of the bathroom. She was getting ready to go with her. One of her girls was having a celebration, so she was getting ready. And she came out and she said, you need Jesus in your life. And at first I went, okay. I believe in Jesus. I said, right, cool. How's that going to help me? And she goes, no, you need Jesus in your life. And that Sunday I was here at New Hope, and I have been a member of New Hope Church ever since.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like you surrendered everything to the Lord. You got baptized here. You read the Bible through in a year, last year. And, you told me that, for like the first time probably ever that you like yourself and that you want to do everything you can to help others. You came to a point where you're able to forgive your dad, which is remarkable as well. How do you want your story to help others, Craig?
Well, like I say, and I'm not one of those baptized guys that put on a list and got a shirt and everyone knew. Sparky, Nick, was getting baptized, and I'm standing next to Spons, and I'm like, all of a sudden, just the power of God.
In regular clothes. You didn't plan it, schedule it?
Clothes. And I just handed my phone and stuff to Matt, and I went up, and that was when Pastor Dominic was still here, and he baptized me, and I mean, like all the stories up here today, if you don't reveal, you can't heal.
Yeah.
And if you think you're the only one going through what you're going through, you're not. Yeah. And if, like Matt said and Miss Sandra said, if Jesus and God could change someone like me, who never cared about you, I'd step over you. Most of the people in this audience I wouldn't have associated with when I was out there running and gunning. I mean, I was just an evil person. And today I'm not. Today I like who I am. This year's a lot has changed. I'm used to running in a big crew. When you're an armed robber, you run with guys that you could depend on, that aren't going to drop a dime on you. And that's the way I lived my whole life, running in a crew. And then this last year, stuff happened, and my crew has small now. And I felt left out, and I felt not part of. And then all of a sudden I realized Jesus never leaves me out. I'm always a part of Jesus.
Yeah.
If I don't get invited to something, it's because Jesus don't want me there. That shift in life, and that's only come this last year. That shift of when I'm not feeling this, it's because I'm in my will. And when I'm not feeling this, and hey, you're having a party? Well, I didn't get invited to that. So what? I'll go do something else.
What's amazing now, too, is that Craig, not only is he a greeter out front, he's leading our New Hope merch area. He volunteers. He gets involved because Craig doesn't do anything haphazard. Nothing. He goes all in. And so, man,
Can I add one thing, Pastor?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's all right.
So
You got the mic?
About 3 years ago.
Quick, though, quick.
About 3 years ago, I'm walking into a meeting, and there's this guy there that I don't really like. He don't like me. I don't like him. It's going to happen sometimes in AA. And I heard him say, "Ooh, here comes the God Squad." And for a second, I thought, I'm going to go knock that guy out. And then I thought, wait a minute. I'm part of God Squad.
Yeah!
That's for Miss Jenny.
Check this out. So at the end of first service, oh, you want to read your shirt? When we recover loudly, we keep others from dying quietly.
That's right.
That's great, yeah. So someone actually told him after first service, they told him that they see him here all the time because he's a greeter, he's out front a lot, and they told him that they would avoid him all the time because they were scared of him. But they're like, now, today, after hearing you, I love you. So, man, thank you guys so much for having the courage to share your stories. Absolutely amazing. Thank you guys so much. Listen, we've been doing things a little bit different this month with these conversations, and even in the closing, we've been doing things different. And every single week after these conversations, we have a prayer team up front, which we always do after service, but it's usually they're here for people to come pray with people after service. But what we've done this month is we're asking you to come during the song. If you are struggling with something, maybe you're struggling with addiction. You say, well, I don't, drugs, alcohol. There are a lot of other areas that people struggle in that nobody knows about it. Maybe you struggle with pornography and you just keep going back, you keep going back, and you tell God, I'm not going to do it again, and you do it again. Maybe in order to make people look at you in a different way, you just lie all the time about this and about that and about this and that, and you're not presenting yourself in a true and honest way. Maybe you struggle with doubts. Maybe there are other things that you struggle with that you know are not good for you, that are not healthy for you. There are a lot of things to be addicted to, and there are a lot of struggles to have. And there's a prayer team that will be up here during this song, and if you need prayer, we want to pray for you, with you. Revealing the feeling is the beginning of healing. Maybe you're here today and you have friends or family that you want to pray for that are struggling with addiction. Maybe it's a son or a daughter and you want to pray for them. You can come forward and we would love to pray for you. Would you stand up with me? And during this song, if you have the courage to come out of your seat, if you feel the prompting of the Lord, and it's usually when your heart starts pounding, that means that you probably need somebody to pray with you. So if you need prayer, we'd love to pray with you during this song.